Welcome to Spenelli Speaks. I'm Danny. Today I'm doing my November wrap-up. What I wanted to do is first tell you a little bit about the books that I didn't finish or didn't actually get to this month. If you watch my previous video for my November TBR, all the books that are listed there will also be listed in this video to give you a little bit of an insight of what I was able to read and what I wasn't. So what I wasn't will come first. I did not finish The Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I really liked the beginning of this book. It's set in London, actually 3 different forms of London. It is about magic, right up my alley. It wasn't bad by any means, but I set it aside to start on other books and just ended up not getting back to it. So I do plan on putting this on a future TBR because I am actually really excited to read this book. I think the writing was very good. I feel like the world building is really solid. So I do really want to come back to this book, as well as the second, which I picked up thinking I was going to be able to get to both of them this month. So excited to get back to these in a future TBR, so that will definitely be coming in the future. So that was A Darker Shade of Magic. Didn't get to finish. Oh. And then I am listening to the audiobook of The Good Neighbor, The Life and Work of Fred Rogers by Maxwell King. The audiobook is really hard for me to listen to. I've said it before that I am just not an audio learner. A lot of the times I do have to go back and re-listen to sections of an audiobook. And so I've been really trying hard to listen to this in the audiobook version and just been having a hard time staying on top of that. I looked at my time remaining the other day. It's about 14 hours left of the audiobook, and to me that just seems very daunting. So I decided to pick up the the hardcover version from my local library, and it's not a big book, so I'm gonna go ahead and just try to go ahead and read the rest of the book. Truth be told, I don't think I'm very far in, even though I feel like I've been listening to it for hours. So I feel like my reading comprehension's a lot quicker and a little bit easier to come by. So I'm gonna go ahead and just read the rest of this book so that I will continue to read into next month, because I did really enjoy what I have heard so far. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish that. And then the book that I didn't even get to this month at all was William Goldman's The Princess Bride. I was so looking forward to this, and I think I just got too ambitious with my TBR list and ended up only getting to, you know, a couple of the books that I had on my list. So I didn't even get to this. I will put this on a future TBR. It is one of my, you know, bucket list books. I do really want to read this, so I will be putting that on a future TBR. So I'm really sad I didn't get to it, but I will someday. So on to the books that I was able to read. Now I did put these in order of the way I rated them. I'm first going to go with my lower rated books to my highest rated books. And this month it was kind of, I have a little bit of everything. I have 2s all the way to a 5. I was kind of surprised about where my ratings were this month. I was really anticipating to have more 4s and 5s, and I actually had 3s and 2s, which to me is a little sad because, you know, when you anticipate a book being really good and then it totally lies flat, it's kind of disheartening. So that was kind of upsetting. But I'll go ahead and get right into it. The book that I finished last is Everything is Awful by Bellassai. I'm going to say this wrong, but Bellassai. And it's so Everything is Awful and Other Observations. And, you know, I knew very little of this comedian other than the fact that I had remembered that I had seen him on the internet in one fashion or other doing funny videos that were, you know, shorter videos, 3 to 6 minutes, and he was very satirical. He, you know, complained about a lot of stuff, and in those moments it was funny. It was comical. In reading this book, which is nonfiction, it's a book that he's telling us about his life, his upbringing. It was literally one of those 6-minute videos just elongated into an entire book. So this was one of the most negative, whining, complaining, self-degrading books I have ever read. And I was so excited to read this. I thought it would be, you know, funny in the sense of, you know, funny haha, not funny that really stinks for you kind of laughter. I will say I laughed in a few areas, more on his lists, which he's kind of famous for, is making lists. But overall, I could not wait to finish this book. And what I mean by that is I just needed to get it done. I don't like to stop in the middle of a book and not read it anymore. Typically, if I'm reading it for the first 5 pages and I don't like it, I'll DNF it. But for this, you know, I got about 50 pages in and I thought it was going to change and I thought it was going to change, and it just didn't. It was just the same complaining and whining, and it was kind of sad too, because he's giving us a rendition of his life. He's giving us memories of his life. And for those of you who don't know him or know of him, he grew up in the Midwest, much like me. He's from the Chicagoland area. I'm from Wisconsin, so very close. So we had similar memories of like growing up in the Midwest. And then he is homosexual, so he has all of that kind of growing up, understanding what that means as he grows into an adult, you know, his coming out and, you know, what that meant to him and his friends and his family. And then as he moves to New York and kind of starts his career, but it was all just so negative, and I just couldn't relate to it. I just couldn't relate to a constant, incessant whining. So I was like, as soon as I was done with the book, I was like, I'm done. I gave it a 2. I couldn't say I liked it at all, but I didn't hate it, so I didn't give it a 1. I felt like he did a good job of his writing. I felt like it was easy to read in a sense that it felt like he was speaking directly to the reader. So it flowed very well. I feel like his chapters were shorter, so it was quick and concise. But overall, the content was just completely boring to me. So I gave that a 2. The next book I also gave a 2, and that was The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. I really wanted to like this book. When I read the book, I was really excited. When I read the inner jacket, I was really excited. This book is about a 17-year-old girl who knows that she is a descendant of an author who has written fairy tales. The difference being that these fairy tales are very dark, and different from your princessy, happy ending fairy tales, and they have a lot of cult following, and those followers are pretty much obsessed with these fairy tales. And the odd thing is you can't really get to these fairy tales anymore. They're not in publication. She's never read the fairy tales, and throughout the story you learn a little bit more, but something happens where her mother is taken, and she and a friend go to find her mother, and through that you find out a lot more about who the protagonist is. And I don't like to give spoilers, so I'm not going to give all that away. So at first glance, very intriguing. So I gave this a 2 because there were instances in the writing style that there were a lot of confusing sentences, whether that be a comma just randomly put into a sentence, or I feel like there was a couple of sentences where it mix-matched characters, or it would start talking about one character and then by the end of the paragraph it was actually talking about another character. I also really didn't like that as a young adult book, this 17-year-old girl was like a past smoker with her mother, like they smoked together and quit together kind of thing. She already had a tattoo, which I don't know where you're from, but from where I'm from, you can't get a tattoo legally until you're 18 unless you have parental consent, which in this particular case, the mom was upset that she got the tattoo in general. So that was irritating to me. There are a lot of curse words in this book, which I understand that books have curse words. However, being a mother of a 12-year-old who reads young adult novels, I really don't appreciate that. Obviously, there's instances where you need to have it, but this just felt really ridiculous. Like there's no need to say the F word that many times. And I think the main reason why I gave it a 2 is because she could have done so much with this storyline. And I truly appreciate the storyline. It's so unique and so different. And it's something I've never read before. And I was just completely disappointed in the execution. I think it could have been so much better. I was very upset with the way that it was kind of laid out. I didn't think it was well written at all. So I gave it a 2. Oddly enough, when I went to put my review in for Goodreads, I realized that this is part of a series, which is also irritating because now I feel like I want to see if the second one is any better because, as you know, I really like series. I really like to see characters develop. But if the second one is as bad as this one, I'm going to be really upset if I take the time to read it. So I'm going to have to really think about that and ponder that if I want to go on to the second one. So I did give the Hazelwood a 2. My next book here I gave a 3, and that's The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And this book is a book that I've been meaning to read for over 10 years. I was really excited to finally put it on my TBR, to finally sit down and read it. And I was kind of like, oh, that's all? That's what I've been waiting 10 years to read? I feel like I've this lesson, this story, this concept I've seen a million times before. So I was kind of like, oh, it was very lackluster. This was a book that I was like really hoping to get through. I did give it a 3 based on the fact that I think it was really well written. I feel like the characters were really good. I feel like the messages were really good. I think overall, depending on what place you are in life, it could be a book that really helps you through. Maybe if you're, contemplating certain situations, it could be a book that you can really go to, read, and it may enlighten you in ways that you were unfamiliar. But what I will say is I was not like starstruck when I read this, and that's what I was expecting because of all of the hype, everything that I had heard of. So basically this book is about a shepherd who chose to be a shepherd because he wanted to travel, he wanted to see more of the land, and he quote unquote falls in love with a merchant's daughter, and so he wants to get to her and marry her essentially. And along the way he meets a few people and realizes that he has a personal legend, and the whole story kind of explains that we all have our own personal legend, and we have to kind of follow the signs and follow the omens to find our personal legend, and the world is going to try to help us to do so. And so he ends up trying to find a hidden treasure because that's his personal legend that he's told, and we kind of see him through that. He meets a couple of people along the way, one being the Alchemist, who is the final person that he kind of, interacts with before he ultimately gets to the end, I suppose you could say. But overall was not blown away by this. I I did not get the reaction that I was expecting. However, as good as it was, I mean, it was a well-written book. It had a lot of great content. It just, I think because I built it up so much, I may have kind of worsened my expectation. I might have made it out to be something that I thought it was gonna be, and it just didn't. So, but I do recommend it. I mean, if you have any sense of spirituality, you're finding yourself, you are looking for clarity in life, this is the book for you for sure. So that I gave a 3. Midnight at the Bright Ideas Bookstore by Matthew Sullivan. I liked this book, I'll tell you that. I did give it a 3, and I'll tell you why. So when I first started this book, I was really intrigued. I blasted through like the first 100 pages like nothing. I was really excited about it. There were a few pieces of the writing where I was starting to get confused because the writer was mix-matching characters, which I think is simple editing. But I liked the characters. I liked where it was going. You know, it hits you with a suicide right in the first like 5 pages. So, you know, you're intrigued, you're wondering what's going on. There's mystery, there's allure. And as you keep going, you know, you start to get senses of more of a like thriller kind of feel. So it's about a bookseller who it befriends a lot of the homeless people in the area who frequent the bookstore as like a safe place, and she befriends this one individual who ends up committing suicide within the first 5 pages. And when she finds him and ultimately tries to save him and isn't able to, in his pocket is a picture of her when she was a little girl, when she was like 8 or 9. And the thing is when she was about that age, she witnessed a murder. So the reader gets this impression that she's been in hiding, and now all this stuff is coming from her distant past, and she is starting to reflect on that, and people from her past are starting to come out of the woodwork. And as a reader, the writer sets it up to make you believe that she's running from something tangible, like a person. And then by the time you get to the end of the book, it's not that at all. And it's, to me, very irritating. I feel like I was set up to believe the book was going in one direction, and it just didn't, and the other direction it went wasn't that great. So as I was reading this book, I was like 5 stars, man. This is a great book. This is awesome. And then by the time I only had about 60 pages left, I was like, where is this going? What is happening? Why is this not going anywhere? And then when it was over, I was like, that went nowhere. Why did I felt like this was going somewhere. So I did give it a 3 because it was a good book. For some of you, you'd probably just be fine with the ending. For me, I don't like being set up to go one direction and then be kind of thrown into another direction that isn't that great. Now, some books will have you go in an opposite direction, but it's gonna be better than the direction you think it's gonna be. Not, oh, that's what's gonna happen now. So for me, just wasn't that great of an ending. I thought it had a great setup, it had a great beginning, it had great characters, all of the little things that would happen, and in your mind you're trying to figure it all out. That was really cool, but then when it came to the end, none of it made any, it didn't matter. You didn't have to think about anything. And I figured it out with maybe 75 pages left. And then I was just like, okay, well, I don't really feel like reading the rest of it, because if it's not actually, nothing's gonna happen, then I don't want to finish. But I don't like to not finish books that I am that far into. But so I gave this one a 3. A roundabout way of saying that. Okay, So this next book I listened to in audiobook, and that's Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. So I didn't read this book. It was an audio, but I picked it up from the library, so I had something to show you. I was surprised to see how little this book was. I gave this book a 4. And I gave it a 4, one, because there were a few pieces of the book that I didn't feel made sense for the reader, and they were like left on, like they weren't figured out by the end. Like it didn't make sense to have the little nuances because they didn't tie in very well, and it left the reader kind of wondering like, what did that mean? Why? And then it kind of confused you at the end. But anywho, so this story is about a woman who is in a coma, and you see her life in while she's in the coma, so she can hear everything that's happening outside of her mind. So when people come and visit her at the hospital, their conversations, all of that, she can hear all of that. And then you get a flashback to like the week before what occurred in order to make her to be in the coma. And then you also get flashbacks to when she was a child. So those 3 timelines are interwoven to kind of tell this story of this woman and what has happened to her. And let me tell you, it is mental. Like when you are listening, like for me listening, and the story is happening, you're just like, what? What? In each timeline. So when you have her in her coma and things are happening, you're just like, whoa. And then when it's 5 days before, you're just like, huh? And then when she's a kid, you're like, damn, it's crazy. This book is, I would definitely, like, this would be a book that I would want to read so that I could like go back and be like, did that really happen? Did I hear that right? But it was very good. I would put this in more of a like slow thriller kind of book. Something similar to Gillian Flynn, but not as graphic. There is one scene that I would say if you don't like assault, that kind of thing, but it's very well, like it's not graphic in the description. It kind of just says what happens and then moves on, which I appreciated. I don't really like very graphic scenes. They hurt my heart. I don't like that kind of stuff. But so I thought it was very tasteful. Not that that's tasteful, but you know what I mean. But this was very good. The very last scene of the book, my jaw is just like hanging, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what just happened? So I would highly recommend this. I did give it a 4 because there were a few nuances that it didn't make sense to me. And it was, the clarity wasn't there, so I didn't give it a full 5, but I did really enjoy this, and I would highly recommend that you read it. So that was a 4. And now the last book is what I rated a 5, and I was super excited to see this. I had never seen it before, and I just passed it in the library, and that is my Jane Austen Cover to Cover. This was so fun to read. This is 200 Years of Classic Covers by Margaret C. Sullivan, and it was just a pleasure. It really was. You get to really see book covers that were associated with Jane Austen's books from basically the 1800s to today. And what was really fascinating is the stories behind each of them. So she gives a little bit of clarity behind each of the covers. So like for instance, in this particular cover, this was actually my favorite cover that I saw in the book. And you can see it's got a big penguin, It's a penguin, people. Yep, a penguin. A peacock. So it's got this beautiful peacock, and what's funny is in the description where she's kind of describing the publisher there and you know why they chose that, it simply says like this is why in any depiction people believe that there were peacocks at Pemberley, because the publisher decided to put a big penguin peacock on the cover. And you do see that in years to come, different publishers also put depictions of peacocks on the covers, probably because of this original cover. And this one is from it looks like 1894, so this is a very old one, but so beautiful. So this was gold and just very, very beautiful. So that was one of my favorite covers that I saw in there. And I wanted to share with you a few of the ones that I thought were pretty funny to me. So later on in the 60s and 70s, we get this cover, which you can totally see definitely like 60s and 70s. I mean, the clothing is not correct. The faces look like they're totally stoned. But then, so hilarious, in this Persuasion, look at those boobs. What the hell is that? You can't show your boobies. I mean, what the hell? Who does that? So that one was weird, I have to say. I think that was, yeah, Pan Classics. Well, Pan, put your boobies away. I thought this one was funny. So this one was in the 1990s. They look like something right out of Harlequin. They're like romance novel covers. Something from the 25-cent bin. So I thought that was interesting. Not what I would have expected. And then these ones were super weird. I didn't understand this at all. But this is from, it looks like maybe late in the teens of 2000s. What? 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 This looks like 50 Shades of Grey or something. Not Jane Austen. And then on the other one, what is she, going to a funeral? I mean, do these people read the books before they make covers for them? I mean, geez Louise. But overall, I loved this. I thought this was great. She really took a lot of time to describe each era's books and kind of what they decided on. And she even went into the translations, foreign translation books, and what they had to offer. I actually have a couple of different covers myself that I didn't actually see in the book. So the book isn't all included. I mean, it must not have every single cover, but here I have one. This is a Signet Classic. So this is all kind of green, and then it's kind of like a watercolor sketch. And this one I don't think is too bad. This is one that I have for my wedding as a favor, so this is going to go to somebody, but I didn't think that was too bad. This is actually the version of Persuasion that I got for one of my classes in school. So this is actually a broad view. So this will actually have essays and different things in the beginning, and then it'll also have the notes. So I like those sometimes because as a reader not from that era, sometimes there's words or depictions or they're referring to something that isn't going to make any sense to me as a reader, especially I'm not from England, I'm not from that time frame. So for them to have the notes here is really helpful, especially when you're taking it for a class. So that was that version. It's more for students, broad view. This one I really like. This is my copy of Pride and Prejudice. Again, this is a Signet Classic. I really like that cover. I thought that was very pretty. Kind of a portrait version, and then kind of gives it that classic look with the florals back here as well. So I thought that was a nice copy. You can tell I probably haven't actually read this copy because it's in pristine condition. That's usually what happens to most of my books on my shelves. And then my mom actually bought herself this copy It's one of the volumes, so it has more than one, but it's beautiful. It has a very nice, one of those cushy covers, and then it has like the gold inlay. This actually has 7 of her novels. So Jane Austen has 6 novels. I don't know why I just did that, that's 4, but 6 novels. But it is included Lady Susan, which is considered like a 7th. It was unfinished, but they usually include it in volumes where they have all of her novels. So typically you'll either see full 6 or they'll add that as the 7th. So this is a volume that my mom has. So that are all of the books that I read or did not read in the month of November. I hope you all enjoyed what you saw, and if you have any opinions on the things that I read, maybe you read them and had a different reaction to them, I would love to hear what you thought. So what I may have as, you know, a 2 or a 3, you may have as a 4 or a 5, or maybe a 1 or a 2. So if you've read any of these books and you have a difference of opinion, I'd love to hear it, love to interact and maybe talk about what you believed made it better or worse. Because we all have our own opinions and we're all entitled to those, as we all are readers in our own different kind of areas of life. So maybe what something was great for you wasn't great for me. And at the same time, I just love talking about books. So if you have any recommendations based on what you've seen, I would love to hear those as well, because recommendations are sometimes where you find the best books. Until next time, guys, I hope you enjoy what you're seeing. Go ahead and hit that subscribe as well as the notification bell so you are aware of when my videos are being posted, as well as liking this video. I've only had a couple out there, so I'm hoping to continue the trend and getting those videos uploaded as soon as I can. Sometimes editing takes me a little bit longer than I anticipate, and not being an editor by trade, it does take me a little bit longer. So like I said, until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching and happy reading. Bye!